Hi, y'all. Earthy Wise Woman. Um, Good evening. I'm here with another video. Um, Tonight I want to talk about the tarot deck. And before we get started, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I really would. First of all, let's get on the basic, and let me turn off my cell phone because that's a headache and a half. Mm. Anyway, let's get on with the tarot deck. Many people find the tarot deck to be mysterious, um, unapproachable, fearful, a lot of things. It's been the stuff of great movies. Um, First of all, the tarot deck is basically a tool of divination. I want to make that really clear. The one thing I do like about the tarot deck is that it can break it down very clearly. And as you learn how to read it, you can delve even deeper into it. So you never outgrow it. You grow with the deck. And then sometimes you outgrow a deck into a new deck. Now, the history of the tarot deck is a little unknown. It's definitely obscure. Initially, everyone thought that the tarot deck came from Egypt, ancient Egypt, is where they thought that it originated. And later on, that's been disputed. So a lot of other theories have come up. The bottom line is no one really knows the origins of the tarot deck. One thing we do know was that it did not start off as a tool of divination. It originally started off as a card game, not the tarot, let's play, but they would use the cards similar to how we use the regular 52 deck of cards to play card games with. And it later inspired into the tarot, and it got more developed as it did, and it still is. Now, some people believe that the tarot deck came before the 52 deck. Your regular standard fortune telling cards are your playing cards. And some believe that the actual 52 deck was first, and then the tarot deck came second. Now, you can't see this. I'm going to move this over a little bit. These represent uh, some of my decks. I've got more than one. And that's not uncommon. That is not uncommon. I'm going to go through some of these right. You know, um, I'm going to go through some of them. It is not uncommon for any tarot card reader, any practitioner to have more than one tarot deck. It is sometimes decks call to us, and that's usually how we end up with decks. Or a lot of people give them to us as gifts. Now, this deck is the Rider Waite deck. This is pretty much considered your standard deck. Pretty much everyone starts off with some form of the Rider Waite deck. Okay, it's your basic. I got this deck, not this particular one, but I got this brand, the Rider Waite, the first time when I was 11 years old. And since that time, I think I've gone through maybe 6 decks of the Rider Waite. It's a good standard deck to start off with. And lately, I find it's hard to find because there's so many decks. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, what's the best tarot deck? There is no answer for that because each deck calls to us. We, not what works for one person may not work for another person. And that's just the way it is. There is no, the deck, the ultimate deck. It doesn't work like that. But this is a very good starter beginner deck. And I'm going to suggest you write it down, the Rider Waite deck. I would tell anybody if you don't know what deck to buy someone, maybe as a gift, or if you're starting off as a tarot reader, this would be a good deck to start with. I'm going to put this aside. Now, one of the hardest decks and one of the deepest decks is this one. This one is the Hermetic Tarot deck. And the reason why I say this is harder, first of all, this is originated from the Golden Dawn. Very intense deck. It's got so much symbolism. As one person once told me, with the Heretic deck, you can do a reading on one card and get everything you need from one. And I do not find that not to be true because I have fallen into this deck many times. It has so much depth to it. The Hermetic deck has all kinds of symbolism, astrological, kinetic. The symbolism is just amazing. And the more you learn, the more the symbolism. They have writing in Hebrew, letters, numerology. Whew, where do I end? The Hermetic deck is not for a beginner, okay? It also, okay, it's based upon, I'm going to just read the labeling so you understand why I say this is a simple deck. Based upon the Hermetic workings of the secret order of the Golden Dawn, okay? Now, I received this deck about, I would say I bought this deck about 10 years ago. I had others, but this was, I had studied it, I had books on it, I never had the deck. When I got it, I opened it up and I literally just kind of fell into the deck. And I was in the deck for probably about a good, 2, 3 years. I still go back when I have to do readings for people who are crossed over. When I'm going in to do more medium work, I'll take this deck to do the reading with. Very good deck. I'm going to put this one aside. Now, back in the day when I was more of a phone reader, I used this deck. And I got to tell you, this is your standard, good old fashioned random house deck. Now, the reason why I say this is there's nothing, they call this the Love Tarot. Okay, that was commercial. But understand though, I wore this deck out. And the reason why I say it's just your standard deck is because it doesn't have all the cards. It only has 22 cards, which are only your major arcana cards. Arcana. Let me get into definitions. As I was saying, the definition of the word arcana is secrets or mysteries. That's all it means. Now, the tarot deck is made up of two sets of arcanas, actually more. So I'm going to break it all down. The first is your major arcana. Now, the major arcana consists of the cards that don't have numbers. They're your basic face cards. Now, these are the things of Hollywood legend. I'm just gonna, because these are made up. This deck is nothing but the major arcana cards. So that would be your High Priestess, the Devil, the Emperor, Death. These are all major arcana cards. The Fool, Wheel of Fortune, the Hermit, the Hierophant, the Star, Temperance, Empress. I could go on. The Sun, the Star, Judgment, and of course the Lovers, the Death card, all of those. Those are major arcana cards. Now, for some of the old school card readers, if you only did a reading with the major arcana cards, you'd be fine. You really could. But remember, when it comes up in a reading, that means something major is going to happen. Doesn't mean bad. It's just something notable will happen when that card comes up. So, it's like if I pull the Empress card, maybe for a woman, and she's of a certain age, she might be pregnant. Good card for that. Depending on the other surrounding cards. But that's the major arcana. Now, there are 22 of those. The minor arcana have 58. Okay? And those are made up of your court cards and your number cards. Now, the court cards are the first four, notice I said four, of a suit. All this breaks down. First, you have your king. You then have your queen. You have your knight. and you have a prince. Okay, four, and princess. Well, you can. Okay, I wanted to not confuse people because some decks have it as a prince, but I'm going to go by the right of way and they have it as a page. So with your court cards, you have your king, your queen, your knight, and your page. And those are four court cards. Usually in a reading that represent a person and and the gender or what the person identifies as their gender. Okay? So I can get into every time I find myself saying that, I find myself wanting to bring out more definition, but I'm going to try to keep this very basic. So that's with the Rider Waite deck. So those are your four court cards. And after your four court cards in the same suit, you have your number cards. And that's 1 through ace or ace through 10. And each represents something. So I know something, that's really general. The best thing to do is also remember there are four suits, and each suit represents an element. First, we have wands. Now, wands represents the element of fire. Okay, that could be for something more or less for creativity and such as that. Then we have the element, I'm sorry, I'm saying the elements first. We have the suit of pentacles. Pentacles is the star, and you've seen it. The pentacles represents the element of earth, and we have the suit of cups. Okay, cups represents the element, of course, of water, and we have the suit of swords. Swords represents the element of air. So in a reading, this can get, as you can see, this can be very elaborate. Now that I've broken down the suits, how it all breaks down, I'm going to just bring up how do you choose your tarot deck? I would tell anybody there is no right way or wrong way to choose your tarot deck. Choose what calls to you. If a deck calls to you, buy it. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have bought certain decks that caught my fancy, and all in all, they weren't all that. I thought they were going to be, but excuse me, they weren't. But I'm glad I have them. And I've also bought some decks that at that moment, they didn't call to me. Later on, as I grew as a reader, they did. Okay, so don't force a deck on you. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. Okay, that being said, let's keep going. Whatever deck you should decide to choose, a lot of people think that they can just get the instruction book and boom, they know how to do that tarot card deck. Tarot card reading takes practice. It takes practice. A lot of practice, okay? I can tell you as a reader, I do personally do a one card reading for myself every day. And really what I'm reading for is to find out what the environment of the day is feeling like or looking like for me. Could be good, could be bad. It could be something I need to be watchful or aware of. And it's just one card a day, every day. And it's pretty much habit. And I would suggest to anybody to start doing that. Now you can journal that one card every day, and I was, a good starter thing to do. So what you would do is, since you're a beginner, you don't know, what atoms from something else, whatever, apples from oranges about tarot card reading. Always refer back to the instruction book that comes with the cards. Never throw these things away. Never, ever, ever. Now, understand, I've had this particular tarot card. I told you this was like a random house deck. I mean, really, it was like the book of the month deck. And yet I kept the instruction. Why? Because they're always good to refer back to. Always. And when you're first starting to read a deck, you do want to refer to the instructions. So never dismiss them, never toss them, never throw them out ever. And in a way, when you do that, you kind of basically um, lessen the value of your deck. Because now here's another thing. Let's keep going. I'm finding myself wanting to ramble. When you decide to first start reading, like I said, do a one card reading every day. Refer to the instruction. Before you refer to the instruction, I want you to look at the card. Look at it, examine it, turn it upside down, and then write down in your journal what you feel this card represents for you that day. Write it down. Please write it down. After you've written down what you feel the card represents for you and what it's showing you, refer to the instruction book that came with the cards and compare. Were you kind of close? You know, were you dead on? Were you completely wrong? Either way, write down in your journal what, don't, paraphrase it, what the instruction says the card is representing. So this is how this should look. In your journal, you want to have the date, you want to have the day and the time. You want to pull your card, you want to write down the card you pulled, and then on one side, what I feel this card represents for me. Dot, put a colon and write out what you feel the card represents to you. Then get the instruction manual, read what the card means according to the instructions, and write out the instructions state that the card means blah, 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 blah. And then come to a conclusion what this completely could mean for you. Okay. And I would do that every day. And I know people who have been doing that. Well, in my case, I have gone through quite a number of journals, but I've been doing it every day. I don't always journal it anymore, but initially I used to journal it every day. I still journal when something significant comes up. I absolutely journal. When I get a day to day card, a minor arcana card, I don't really think I should journal unless it's something like an ace, a 10, or definitely a court arcana card. Always a major arcana card. I will journal. Onward. Now, remember what I said, there are no wrong decks. There are just decks that may not be ready, you or might be ready for. Okay, now, I admit, because I am a tarot card reader and because I have always had a deck, my first deck I got at 11. I've often given decks to my grandchildren and my children. Okay, my daughter, her first deck was the Hello Kitty tarot card deck. And yes, there is a Hello Kitty tarot card deck. And don't be surprised if certain decks that you want quickly go out of print. It happens all the time. The Hello Kitty deck is currently out of print. And I think it's been out of print for about 10 years. So that one deck that I bought my daughter, which when I bought it for her, she was about 8 years old. My daughter is currently going to be 35 this July. That deck of cards is probably worth about $600 now. I paid about, I want to say, $17 for it, which means that tarot card decks might be something to invest in. And I'm being flippant, but I'm not being completely funny. Okay? The one deck I have always wanted, and I don't want to try to explain why, but I love the look of it, was the Jesus Christ deck. Always wanted it. First came out in the late 70s. Um, Tried to find it. The last time I tried, I think it was up to $700 to buy the deck. We'll see. I don't know. One day. Now, another deck, this is old school. When I say old school, I'm going to show you some decks that are kind of popular and kind of look, of other than the Right Away. Another really popular deck is the Well Worn Path. And as you can see, uh, the reason why this one is so is because it was made by Raven Grimaldi. He was a powerhouse in Wicca. He really was. And he's no longer with us. He has crossed over. The deck is excellent, and it is one of those decks that actually the book by itself, I'm going to open this up. The book by itself is well worth reading. And the deck is just absolutely gorgeous. But see the book? Now, I'm going to strongly suggest, people ask me, and I've been asked a lot, what is the best tarot book to buy? Wow. The best tarot book to buy. I've got so many tarot card books, it's not even funny. Some are very glib, where they'll give you like a basic meaning of a card, not very detailed, not enough detail. Some are okay, but I'm going to strongly suggest the best book for each tarot card is its own instruction book, which is why I tell you to keep it. Now, for an overall view of the tarot itself, there are a lot of great books. I'm going to suggest some writers. One would be, of course, Ray Buckland. I would definitely suggest you read his books on the tarot card. He came from a gypsy origin. But here's another one. I put some out of my library. And this one, I like this one. It has an overview. Now, its definition of each card and what it means is okay. But the overview of the decks are pretty good. I like this one. Now, this one, I like this one. This one, it comes well, what's the word? Well, it's a good choice. Well, what? Okay. Because it tells the whole story of the tarot. It breaks it down. It's a very well-rounded book. I would strongly suggest everybody to buy this one. I'm going to put it up closer again. It's a well-rounded book. That is the word I was trying to look at. Well-rounded. The writer of the book is a certified tarot master, and it's not his first book. So, and people who refer to this book actually are tarot card readers themselves. Plus, he also goes through the Kabbalah and how it matches with the tarot cards. A lot of people do not know that the tree of life, people can correlate the tree of life with the major arcana cards of the tarot card deck. That's one I would suggest. So I hope I'm not putting these up too fast because I think writing them down and reading them. Now, the Witch's Tarot, that is actually a deck, but this is actually a very good book. And I would strongly suggest people to buy this one. It is probably very hard to find, okay, but how she shows the symbolism of the decks, of the deck of cards, is amazing. If you can find the Witch's Tarot, it's worth having. Reading the book is worth reading. I'm glad I found this one because I think it might be out of print now. But I'm pretty sure you can probably find something on Marketplace or something on Amazon, but it's worth owning. Okay. Now this one is probably going to be very hard to find. I do like it. Now this one has to do with tarot divination, and this is by Aleister Crowley. I know a lot of people get very nervous when I say that, but Crowley's approach to tarot card reading was very insightful, worth reading about. As you can see, this is not a very thick read, but how he broke down the tarot was just amazing. He also shows it through the Kabbalistics. It's really a worth have. Definitely read it. It is, even though it is a thin book, it is not an easy read. I can say it like that. Now, onward. There is no wrong cards because tarot cards also breach out into something called oracle decks. And oracle decks, I've seen oracle decks, some as little as maybe 50 cards, some up to 96 cards. So that's why I said the tarot is still growing. As we, as practitioners, grow, society changes and evolves. The tarot also does the same thing. It evolves. It changes. It grows. And I think that, everyone says, well, what's the best card for me? I don't have one. I have some that I like that I can't explain. This one, which is the Tarot of the Moon and the Garden. Now, the reason I got this deck for myself is because I love the colors. And the colors actually gave me more insight when I have to use my third eye in doing readings. But believe it or not, for everything I've shown up here, I have not shown you my own personal deck that I use. These are just some of the decks that I own. I'm going to show you my own personal deck. My personal deck here. Notice it's in a zip bag. I take it out here. I always keep it in a black velvet bag. And the reason I keep these in there is to keep them clean and keep them protected. Because this is the deck I use when I do most of my readings. Now, those other decks are my decks, and I do use them. But this one is the one I use most frequently. And this is the one I take with me to do readings. So I'm going to pull this out. This is the transformational deck. Okay. I have, the first time I saw this deck, I loved it. I didn't even read all of the reviews. I mean, you can do that, but this deck spoke to me so loudly, it nearly screamed. The art is amazing. How it depicts everything. It correlates with me. It jives with me. This is my deck, and it always has been, and it has been the deck that I have read from for the past 30 years. And believe it or not, it's the same. I've had the same cards for over 30 years. And yes, I'm not even trying to be a know-it-all or a hypocrite when I tell you people this. I always keep the instructions to all of my cards, all of them. Please do. Okay. Now, as I've said, you can see this deck and say, okay, I want to get that deck too. I don't know how much this deck costs now. I do know that as a deck gets older and popular, it does go up in value. So I think I've spent $17 when I bought this deck. And now it is worth something like between $95 and $150 for this deck. No joke. You can see the covers, I mean, the holder, it's been all kinds of taped up and everything. Cards are in great condition. This is the deck I use all the time, my deck. Now, notice though, I do keep it in a black bag. Okay, I do that to shield it. Another rule I have, unless I tell a person to pull a card from my deck, I do not let anyone else ever handle my deck. That's my card. I do not let other people touch my cards other than in a reading, mainly to protect my cards from energy. I don't like negative energy on my cards. Now understand, there is always negative energy when doing a reading because you're dealing with negative energy. You're doing a card reading. So after you do a reading, always cleanse your cards. And there's so many ways to cleanse your cards. One of the things I do before uh, before I do a reading, I will always, I'm trying to get all my stones. I keep stones with me and near my tarot deck. But on top of my deck, before I start my reading, I always put my quartz crystal on top of my deck. I'm going to put my camera down so you can see. It's always on my deck. And that's for protection and cleansing. I'm always holding my, you can see closely, my tiger's eye. I hold this to gain insight and wisdom because I'm going to need that. And there's a lot of things. My amethyst is also for protection and wisdom. I keep this with me. These are the stones I keep. And this is just to banish any evil, my onyx, to make sure. There are several. I mean, some of these were given to me. This particular one was given to me by a Tibetan priestess when I was doing a reading for her. I love the energy of this stone so much I kept it with my stones. And another amethyst. This one is just a clear picture. I like to put this on a card when I need more insight on the reading, as with this one. These, when stones come to me during a reading, I will always keep them. And these all came to me and various energy. So usually I will surround them when I'm, say, if I have to go to the restroom, but I can't be near my deck, I literally will surround my cards with my stones as such. More protection. And what this does is put the energy of wisdom, put the energy of protection, uh, banishing any evil. All this is around my cards at all times. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this away. I made this bag myself, even the quirky little thing on it. I loved the paisley, so I put it on my bag. Now I put my stones in purple because for me that represents spirit, and spirit is what I need whenever I am doing a reading. And these stones get along very well together. They have had to because they've been together for well over 30 years. Not all of them at once, but gradually I'm going to put this back in and I'm going to put my cards back in. Okay. And these are the cards I usually grab when I'm doing a reading. And I have other cards as you saw, but those are my favorites. And this is my favorite, and these are the ones I use as a reader. Now, saying all that, because we're going into overtime here, I know, because it's been over 30 minutes. Remember, you're not going to be the super reader the first time out to bat. You're going to stumble, you're going to make mistakes. The best thing I can do as far as giving you advice would be don't be cynical. Don't be so hard on yourself, and don't try to bend the cards to mean what you want them to mean. Cards mean what they mean. Um, you may not understand that meaning right then and there. Just, let it marinate. Eventually, the universe will show you what it meant. And I've learned that. And you might find as you become more and more intuitive with your card reading, sometimes you'll pull a card and it's not even you that you're pulling the card for. You might have a member of your family on your mind or an incident on your mind, and you pull a card and it represents that. Well, you may not know that as a beginner card reader, but as you grow and as you evolve and as you develop your reading skills, you'll realize, oh, darn, I've been thinking about my cousin so much, I pulled a card about her. And it happens a lot because let's face it, we're touching other individuals in our world. Of course, their energy and the situation is going to rub off on us. You might pull a card concerning world events, and that's not uncommon. Just be open to the idea of it. Because remember, cards are touching the universe. So when you pull a card every day, the card does not necessarily have to be specifically you. It could be what's going on at the office today, the atmosphere there, or what's going on in the world today, the atmosphere, you know. Or if you have children, it might be what they're going through at school, in which case you might want to ask them or, address their teacher. The cards are that way. And the more you read them, the more you will learn from them and the more you'll grow. And like I said, recapitulating, good word, recapitulating, repeating myself, you might outgrow a deck, or I wouldn't say outgrow, but grow on, because you can always go back and read another deck, a simpler deck from, early on, but you might grow to another deck, and you might grow to another deck. There's one deck in there I didn't show you because it's much more darker. Uh, the reading I do that reading, but I generally do that reading, like I said, when I am doing things for medium work. when I'm having to read spirits and energies. That is a whole another video for sure. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this video here because it's a good place to end it. And I'm asking with all due respect, people, please like and subscribe to my channel. And if there's any other ideas or something you think I might be able to touch upon or you would like to know something about, go ahead and text me. Also, come to my Etsy store because I also, do readings. So come on and find out about it. And go ahead and maybe, I don't know, get a reading from me. Anyway, all things considered, stay safe and be blessed.